Every time I tried to make something happen, it didn't. But when I would truly let go, after I think interview number 20, 21, I was going to go back and become a counselor because, oh, you'd make a great counselor, people said. And so I truly inside, I'd given it up. And then I got a call from a friend of a friend of a friend who knew somebody that had an opening. And then every promotion or new school that they asked me to go to and change, it wasn't when I was looking for it.
That is the voice of the talented David Rische. With 30 years of experience in public education as a teacher, assistant principal, and principal, David has dedicated his career to shaping strong culture and inspiring educators. Now retired from administration, he continues his mission as a professional speaker, trainer, and consultant to bring fresh, engaging strategies to school districts across the country. If that wasn't enough, he's also a magician as he discusses how this has been an impactful strategy for his administrative career, but then also as a speaker. In this episode, we're going to dive into creative ways to cultivate an engaging and positive school environment as David shares how school leaders can use unconventional approaches to boost morale, build stronger teams, and create lasting change on your campus. Before we dive into the conversation, I just want to let you know that Charlie Peck and I have built a brand new book study kit, which is free on my website, joshstamper.com/language of behavior. We've had multiple educators reach out to us to ask if we have some type of supporting material for the book, The Language of Behavior. And we want to make sure that we had that available for free. So if you head over to that link, which will be in the show notes, you can pick up your free book study kit for yourself, for a group of teachers, or your entire campus. It's going to be an impactful additional resource to help you as you discuss this very important topic. Now let's jump into the conversation with David, as we're going to be talking about a lot of different strategies as far as some of these unique things like staff mud runs, flipping faculty meetings, and even using magic as a strategy to capture your imagination, enhance the educational experience, or even build a stronger relationship with those that you're serving. Welcome back, everyone, to Aspire to Lead, where we will be discussing the visions, inspirations, and experiences from top educational leaders. My name is Joshua Stamper, and you can connect with me on Twitter or on Instagram at Joshua_Stamper. All right, Aspire Leaders, I'm back for another week with a phenomenal guest. Super excited about this conversation. This gentleman's got a plethora of experience as he's been in the role of a teacher, assistant principal, and now consultant for 30 plus years, just supporting so many different educators. David Rische, thank you so much for being on Aspire to Lead.
Thank you, Josh. I am very honored to be here.
Let's kick it off because I know you've got quite the story, as you didn't start off in education. I know you've really been focused on the culture and climate as an administrator and have some really fun different initiatives that you've done over the years. And I'm really excited to jump into the conversation. But before we do that, will you just share a little bit about your educational journey as far as both as a teacher, but also as an administrator?
Yes, absolutely. I was not going to go into education. My father was a teacher at a private school, and it was very poorly funded. And I watched him, he would work, no stipends, and he would coach. He would spend his own money on recess and sports equipment. And so when I graduated high school, he said, you should be a teacher. I'm like, no way am I going into that. So I went to college and got a business degree because I want to make money, and got out of college. Sales and retail was about it. And I'm kind of like you, Josh, I'm a creative. So that's as far from who I am internally. So American Airlines was hiring like crazy at the time. I got on as a flight attendant. Even though I lived in Colorado, I moved to Texas. I did that for 5 years. That's how I met my wife. It was too hard, us both doing it. So I went to see a career counselor. And sure enough, he said, you're internally motivated. You need to do something that you feel is valuable. And at the top of the list was being a teacher. I'm like, okay, Dad was right. I'll be a teacher. And so made that journey of, working, going to school, getting that certification, taught for 8 years, and I got a little restless of wanting to, have a larger classroom, hopefully have a greater impact. And I'll be honest, I wanted to get a raise. We had 3 children. So went back and got my master's and was fortunate to get an assistant principal job. And I always like to throw this one in. I had 22 interviews before I got my first assistant principal job. In fact, I took one of those Gallup tests and it said I would not make a good leader. And I've won awards and things like that. I'm not trying to brag. I always like to encourage people with perseverance. And then I was a principal for 13 years and I just retired last summer, but I'm probably busier than ever now.
Okay, I want to talk about the 22 times because this is something that a lot of people come to me in regards for coaching and just trying to hey, what do I need to do to get to the next level? I mean, that's quite the process to go through. I'm guessing you're pretty defeated. I mean, I've been in interviews before where I haven't got the job as far as, either being an assistant principal or principal. And I know for me, it was hard not to take it personal, but then also to kind of go through almost the different stages of mourning to get to the point of like picking yourself back up and saying, okay, I need to fix some things, or maybe I need more experience. So for you, what did that process look like to finally go through 22 different times to get to where you wanted to be eventually?
Yeah, and it's everything you said. You take it personally. You defeat it. Oh, maybe I shouldn't do this. And it was just kind of that stubbornness of I knew I could do it, and I wanted just somebody to give me that first chance. Yeah, it was tough because you see other folks get the jobs, and like, I could do what they're doing. And one thing I did was I took that strengths test that didn't say I'd be a good, and I put that on the wall as kind of a motivator. But encouragement to your listeners, just keep persevering. And here's what's strange about my career. Every time I tried to make something happen, it didn't. But when I would truly let go, after I think interview number 20, 21, I was going to go back and become a counselor because, you'd make a great counselor, people said. And so I truly inside, I'd given it up. And then I got a call from a friend of a friend of a friend who knew somebody that had an opening. And then every promotion or new school that they asked me to go to and change, it wasn't when I was looking for it. It was when, and now I thought I wanted to be in central office, and that didn't work out. It's that perseverance of, and sometimes you got to know when to give up, but other times it's just, just keep going through the grind.
No, I love that motivation piece too, of putting that up and proving folks wrong to say, no, I can do this. I will do this. And then, of course, getting that opportunity to do so. So let's talk about your role as far as administrator and specifically a principal. I know that you got an opportunity to go to a very special opportunity, which was the Disney Institute. I'd love to learn, what you took from that experience, but then also I know you're big on culture and climate of a campus and maybe how you took the things from Disney and incorporated that into your own school.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of the underlying philosophy of if I can make teachers happy, a place they want to go, a place they want to be, they want to keep coming back year after year. I believe wholeheartedly in that trickle down effect with the students and the children. So yeah, Disney Institute, it's incredible. It's like a 4-day event where you spend half the day in the classroom learning all the history and philosophy, and then you go out in the park for half a day too. So you get to see behind the scenes and everything. And by the way, they said we can share this with peers and other educators, so we're not breaking copyright. One of my favorite activities, and anybody can do this, you don't have to be the principal, you do this as a teacher or do this for your team, was doing the vision and value statement. Now, when you first hear that sounds so dry because we've all done that, sometimes spend days and then we put it on the shelf, but they had a really fun way of doing it. So they said, just come up with a sentence that you would like about your school. And so after a little bit of trial and error, we came up with, we wanted to be the second happiest place on earth. So that became our motto. We put it on print, we had it on our t-shirts, things like that, the second happiest place on earth. And then they said, okay, here's how you come up with your values. They gave us a list of adjectives, like there's about 60 on there. And they said, narrow it down to 8 that, describe your school, or there were a lot of business leaders there, your business, your entrepreneur. So it was kind of tough because they only give you like 5 minutes to find, out of 60 to find 8. And they're like, okay, time's up. You have your 8. And then they said, now narrow it down to 4. I'm like, oh man, no way. And they said 3 if possible. So, and again, they put you on the timer. So we came up with, see if I remember them, safe, positive, professional, and serve. And we wanted those things to define everything that we did at my school. So I would put those on agendas. I would, they got tired of me ranting and raving about them. We would interview questions would be geared toward those 4 things. Difficult conversations with employees. I said, look, we're all about being professional. It's one of our core tenets, our core values. Please don't yell at kids in the hall, things like that. And in serving, so it's just not all about us. We would do some community projects. And one last thing too, even like budget purchases. If it didn't fit with those 4 values, then it's like, we're not going to do it. So it was something really, it was a fun activity, but really, really simple. And I told everyone, have this memorized, because if my boss comes in and asks you what our 4 values are, I want you to be able to rattle them off. And they were able to, because it was so simple. And kind of like your book, 3 tenants, not 30, but three. So often we look for that complicated, but that's a fun, simple way if you want to do vision, mission, values for those listeners out there.
All right, I want to dive deeper into that because you had said something about being the second most enjoyable place to be in. And right now, with the teacher shortage and some of the educators that are leaving the profession, or maybe just even going to different buildings to maybe go to what they perceive as a greener pasture. As our principals are looking at their staff, what are some things that they can do to shape the culture to make sure that people are coming back and are feeling like this is a place I want to be for a very long time?
I'll start with some of the small, simple ones.
Sure.
I had a supervisor encourage me one time. We would, as administrators, you go in the room and do just, short pop-ins, evaluations. And she said, don't just leave without giving them feedback. Leave a sticky note. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I went and listened to this teacher one time, and she did a phenomenal job. And so I wrote, just a little sticky note, left it there, didn't think much about it. It was a year later, I was doing those little rounds of evaluations and popped in her room. And again, a phenomenal teacher doing a great job. And we had some downtime. I was kind of looking around, and I saw her bulletin board. I had a picture of her husband, her dog, a trip they took, and my sticky note from a year ago was up there. I was like, man, first of all, two things. Number one, I need to be doing more of this. She had to wait a year till I came back. But number two, I believe wholeheartedly people are starving for a word of encouragement. So there's the sticky note. Another one I would do every day, unless I had an emergency, and I learned this from a mentor principal. She would walk the building every single day, say hi to every single staff member. Forget the emails, forget the calls, forget the report that was due. You just go say hi to every single person. And it's good to take a notepad with you too, because that famous question: did you get my email? What about the AC is out, the plumbing is out, things like that. So, but when I left, one of the cards I got from one of my teachers said, "I'm going to miss you stopping by my room every single day." So things like that can have a huge impact. So those are the big two. You want me to get some of the other ones that I mentioned?
Yeah. Well, first off, I want to just say firsthand, I've seen this. I remember my principal, especially when the staff were hired to the campus, she would write on their board a little message.
Oh.
And a lot of those teachers would not erase that on their board. They would keep it up, and it was there until like the kids messed it up or just dust or whatever took it down naturally, but they were up for a really long time. And I know as an administrator walking into those classrooms and consistently seeing that on all of our new staff, literally being up there for the entire school year, that obviously that small gesture meant a lot to them, just even feeling invited and feeling a part of the campus. So you don't think of it as a big gesture. You think, oh, this is something that they probably won't even notice or won't make an impact. But like you said, it does. It does truly impact them in a great way. And so even a little sticky note, like you said, it may not seem like a big thing, but it can really help folks, especially when they're going through some tough times through the year. Yeah, let's talk about some of the bigger initiatives. I know you do a mud run. I'd love to learn more about that and how it helped impact, probably more about team building and maybe the morale of the educators that are on your campus too.
Yes, I'm always trying to think, what can I do to make life better for my staff? So I was scrolling on Instagram and it said, coming to the Dallas-Fort Worth, or I think it was called the Muddy Dash, free registration. Now, I'm not a runner. I enjoy exercise, but I'm not a runner. And I've never done anything like that. But I'm like, that might be kind of fun, And so I took it back to my counselor and my assistant principal. And I said, hey, would you guys sign up and do this with me? And try to hype it up. And I'm like, sure. Okay, so I'm like, okay, we have 3 to do it. If we could each get one other person, if we could get like 6 to 10 to do this, that would be great. It was on a Saturday. We got the word out. Like I said, hyped it up. And we had 35 people sign up. No, I was hoping for 5 to 10. 35 people signed up. And not every single one of them showed up for the day of, but quite a large crowd did. And most of us walked, but a 2-hour event of literally climbing things, crawling through the mud, pulling each other. And it was in those moments of just walking side by side with someone, you truly get to know them. Like, I've never asked about your children, your ambitions. What, do you want to keep teaching or do something else? Things like that. We just have incredible conversations that would not happen in the building, but happened out there. And then there was one moment where it was towards the end, and the course was pretty run down by the time we got through it, but it was like about 25 yards. It was just mud at the bottom and then waist or neck high water. So we start walking, And it was literally like quicksand. I start going down, and a teacher was next to me and pulled me up. So, what a teachable moment. The teacher pulls the administrator out of the mud, and we still laugh about that to this day. But she's in a different district, and I'm doing my own thing. But when we get together, we always talk about that, just joke about that moment. So it was an incredible time. And again, it was free, it was cheap. But I really think staff is looking for that connection. Yes, everybody's busy, and we don't want to do one more thing. But my encouragement is if you get 3 to 5 people, it'll build slowly that positivity and energy and culture.
Yeah, we definitely need to find some bonding activities that we can learn more about each other as people, as humans, which will obviously impact the culture of your campus. I want to talk about something too that's could be boring or mundane. You have a creative way of doing staff meetings. So I'd love for you just to share a little bit about how you've flipped the faculty meetings and what that looked like for your staff.
Sure. Well, several years ago, I was at an Eric Jensen training on working with students of poverty, and it was phenomenal. Big fan. But we had a break, and I was talking to 2 teachers from another district, and they found out I was a principal, and so they immediately started complaining about their principal. Actually, I think they're from your staff, Josh. No, I'm kidding. I'm messing with you. No. Sorry. Anyway, they started. I'm like, I want to hear what they have to say. So the kind of typical things. He was kind of aloof and checked out. Door closed all the time at meetings. But here's what really stood out. They said his faculty meetings are so long and so boring. We sit there and we tabulate how many times he says and we get to 30 or 40 and then we lose interest. So that really got me thinking. I'm like, are my faculty meetings like that? But
well, obviously mine are, because they were complaining about me.
So, but that got me thinking. And I've never done the flipped classroom, but I was intrigued by that title and the whole method. So I'm like, what would a flipped faculty meeting look like? What if teachers had more involvement and engagement? So kind of marinated that thought for a while. And then I started thinking, what if a faculty meeting was kind of like, I'm showing my age here, but I grew up watching variety shows, where they'd have the singing, the dancing, the guests, things like that. It's really dating myself. But what if it was more like a variety show? What if a teacher could look on their calendar and see we have faculty meeting and have kind of a little bit of excitement or anticipation? So it was like a 3-year experiment, and my boss he was 100% behind it. Actually, it's one of the presentations I do, but I will gladly. May I share the 5 pillars?
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So kind of the 5 pillars, and again, they're so simple, they're powerful. The first one is I call music provided by. So I'll pick a staff member beforehand and just say, hey, what genre of music do you like? And then during the meeting, first of all, when people walk in, that's the music playing. And you've probably, especially being at conferences, you see the difference between when they don't play music and then you do. It's incredible. So the walk-in music's playing, people try to guess who is this. And then if we do breakout sessions or, think, pair, share, we play their music. And then at the end, we play their music. And it's just, especially some of your shy staff members, it's just an easy way to get them involved and to hear the different genres of music, like, of course, Taylor Swift and the Guardians of the Galaxy soundtrack are the big ones. But one time a teacher picked Bread. I'd never heard of Bread. and so we played that, but it's funny, on my Spotify now it says you might like Bread. Anyway, so music provided by, it takes minimal effort. The second thing is what I call getting to know you, where especially after COVID, the disconnect of just socializing, and how many teachers just spend all day in their rooms with children and are just desperate to talk to an adult. So I would Google or just come up with some type of prompt and put it up and say, okay, you've got a minute and a half, 2 minutes, go find someone you haven't talked to all day and share this prompt. And just the buzz of them talking. At first it was a little quiet, but then they got used to it. And I always had to stop them. I'm like, okay. Just like that desire for encouragement, that desire to socialize and talk about what's going on in their lives, particularly outside of work, if at all possible. So again, 2 minutes. We did what was called show and tell. It's like we used to do back in elementary school. Pick a teacher, tell them beforehand and say, okay, you have a 2-minute limit where this is not your dissertation or life story, but tell us about you, and then throw in one thing we don't know about you. That was the fun part. So they started out real basic, like they would show pictures and say, it's my family, my husband, our travels to Europe. And then they started doing PowerPoints and Google Slides. And then people started bringing objects in and doing a real show and tell. And then they started bringing food in. So it kept growing like this monster. It was one of the funnest parts of our meeting. I discovered one of my teachers used to train dolphins at SeaWorld. One of them used to be a cast member at Disney. One of them sang at the Grand Ole Opry. One of them wrote books on Amazon under a different name. That was crazy.
A pen name?
Yeah. I don't know how appropriate they were, but it's all good. It's all good. So anyway, all right. So number 4 is what I call the halftime show. And by the way, when we have faculty meetings, I had the district things I had to share, state things, legal, testing. We still had to do that. But maybe a teacher could do it. Maybe they could buddy up. Maybe we could do it in a fun way. Crumble it up, throw it to somebody, and just thinking outside the box. How can we take this, what's normally mundane, and make it a little more exciting? So the halftime show, we would get up and stretch, put something, a video on. One time I put on Freddie Mercury's at Live Aid, doing his "Ayo, ayo." I don't know if you've ever seen that, Josh, but it's a lot of fun, and we would sing along with Freddie. And people are laughing, high-fiving afterwards. And one of my teachers said, "I have no idea who that was." And I'm like, "Oh, you don't know Freddie?"
That pains me right here, David. Good night.
Yes, Freddie, but it's okay. All right, so that was number 4. And then number 5, I called Dave's Faves, where I would just put up a quote at the end, or we show an inspirational video. I'm fascinated by the Navy SEALs, so every now and then I'd find a little SEAL motivational thing. Or I'm trying to think, the late Rita, somebody, she had Every Child Needs a Champion. Rita Pearson, I think was her name. Anyway, so we would do that, and I kid you not, Josh, they would clap at the end of the meeting. And I'm like, who gets clapping after a faculty meeting? So I tried not to let it go to my head, but again, when I got my cards for retirement, somebody wrote in there, one of the things I'm going to miss are your faculty meetings. And we never knew what was coming, and just the excitement and anticipation there. So to your guests, please feel free to try one of those.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and they don't have to do all 5 in one meeting.
Right.
I mean, you can use just 1 or 2 throughout the year. And yeah, I think it needs to be something that's engaging and captures their imagination a little bit, because we don't want it to be something where they're begrudgingly walking down from the classroom to the cafeteria and saying, "Man, I really wish I was not here right now," and finding ways to take their time by tallying your ums. So let's talk about something else that you brought up, which was the engagement piece. I know, capturing their imagination. You have a love for magic, and I'm curious how you incorporated that into your school climate, but then also, was it something that you just used with your staff, or was that something that you did with your students too?
I did magic as a kid and loved it, but then I stopped as a teenager because I wanted to be cool and meet girls. I didn't realize that would have been a great way to be cool and meet girls, but
could have worked out for you.
That's right. Anyway, decades went by, and my own children got a little magic set for Christmas once, and I think they played with it like twice. So once I was cleaning, and I pulled it out. I'm like, I wonder if my students would enjoy this, So I practiced a little and took it, and it was kind of like a PBIS reward type thing. Hey, you can come see Mr. Rische do the magic show. And they absolutely loved it. And I enjoyed it too. I'm like, why did I ever give this up? Start doing a little bit more. And then I would do like one at the faculty meeting also. And what a great way to try out new material, because if you mess up, hey, they're very forgiving, or sometimes they don't even know you messed up. And so it started to build momentum. And then we had Mr. Dave Burgess, the pirate guy, come as a keynote to start off our year.
He does it in his,
Well, he's phenomenal. But he did just a little bit of magic. I'm like, I wonder if I could add that to my speaking to enhance it a little. It's kind of turned into this monster now, where I'll do it when I'm doing my speaking engagements, and they'll put on the surveys, we want more magic. Okay, that's the biggest thing you took away. That's all right. I recently, I retired, but I went and substituted last semester at it was a STEAM academy. And I started thinking, STEAM, that ties in with magic. And I asked the principal, could I do a magic? Because they did a whole school assembly to start their day every single day. And she's like, oh yeah. So here I am in front of, 400 to 500 folks. And you know how magic is, man. You mess up. So again, great practice. This semester, I'm a principal substitute, and they do video announcements. So I do 2 days a week. I'll do a trick, and believe me, if I forget, the kids let me know. What's neat is the kids and adults are fascinated by it. Because I think we have so much CGI, so much special effects. It truly is an art, and I noticed with students that have challenging behaviors, it calms them down and they want to learn it. Like I have one trick where I have 5 $1 bills and I cut them out. I count them out and I show front and back. And I flick my wrist and they turn into 500 front and back. It's pretty incredible, Josh. And so I've got one of my behavior students, you have to tell me how that works. He thinks it's real. But even when I would go to some of our children with special needs, some of the teachers would say that's the first time they've sat still. And one little 5-year-old girl wanted to learn more, and I would meet with her. So it's a neat thing. And it's a fun hobby. And kind of like everything else, I need to practice it more. And kind of like everything else, I spend too much money on it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think just the engagement piece there, I mean, there's probably a lot of ways that you can incorporate that just to keep people's attention, and especially those students like you're talking about in special education, motivated or excited to be in that space and make it enjoyable for them. I want to talk about some of the things that you're doing, because you've talked about this. You're adjusting now to the consultant side of things. I know you're doing some research, speaking, and then also writing micro books. So I'd love for you just to share out kind of how you're supporting educators now and how people can find out about all of your services.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was kind of joking, but it's kind of true. I'm a little more busier now than I was. I got on with a company, Teaching Strategies. They're a wonderful organization. And I'm listen to this big title, a professional development network consultant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Which means I go to schools and I train the teachers,
Sure.
in their curriculum. It's been an absolute blast to not be the boss. And you probably discovered that when you step down. It's also unique also because you leave after doing something for 30 years and you miss the office group. We were a pretty tight-knit group. You miss the kids. So I would encourage anyone retiring, to find something to fill that void. Some just volunteer or nonprofit, things like that. It was weird starting over with going to an interview. I wrote a book on interviewing and I was a nervous wreck, pretty pathetic, but I somehow got the job. And then, they need a resume. I hadn't updated my resume in, I think, about 15 years. So I looked at it, I was like, oh, this is really bad. So, and then seniority, I'm like rock bottom seniority. I joke about one of my friends that's been with the company for a while. She got to take a trip to Italy to do training there. I'm not making fun, but my first trip was to Pocahontas, Arkansas. That's where I did my training.
A little different.
Yeah, shout out to those folks out there, man. They're mighty. It's weird starting over. So,
sure.
So there's that side of it. And also I do speaking. You can go to my website where my niche audience, new and aspiring leaders, I have such a burden for them, that new assistant principal, that new principal, and try to talk about, I've got one presentation called Rock Bottom Leadership, where I just take every mistake I've made and please don't do this in that kind of format. Also talking about stress and overwhelm. What about leading right where you are? And that was a lesson I had to learn with the 22 rejections. I have to, accept where I am right now, but also what can I do in a leadership role? I know you talk about this. I'm just a teacher. We're so much more than that. So there's that. And then, just spending time with the family is incredibly rewarding. That's just a quick synopsis of where I am right now, Josh.
Well, I've been flashing, David, your website up on the screen for those who are catching us on YouTube. So thank you for all that are viewing this. And then also make sure that you're hitting the like and subscribe button. But before we end this conversation, David, I'd love for you to give an actual item. I know a lot of our listeners are either aspiring to become a leader or young in their leadership journey. So if there's something they can do tomorrow or next week to enhance their leadership journey, what would you recommend?
I would say when it's all said and done, they've got to take care of themselves. Self-care is not selfish because, and you've probably seen this too, I've seen people that live in their buildings or they get the job and they sell out and then their family falls apart, things like that. So, I love the perspective, I think it's John Gordon that talks about life is seasonal. I've yet to meet the person that has the life in balance, but you go through those seasons kind of like an accountant, crazy busy right now, but maybe during June, July, not so bad. That's my encouragement. And then kind of what I start out with, doing those free and cheap things with your staff. Don't think it has to be, we're going to Six Flags or whatever. It can be just something smaller. Walk. We have groups that will walk after school. We set up indoor pickleball, a little cheap yard set and things like that. So it just letting that creative side flow. My words of encouragement.
No, it's very important. And I think a lot of folks are And I did this too. You're all in when you first start until the balance is so out of whack. You're like, I can't sustain this for a long period of time. So yeah, David's words are very wise for anyone that's definitely starting their leadership journey. David, how can folks connect with you? Obviously, we've been flashing your website up and we'll have that in the show notes. Where would you like folks to connect with you on?
Yeah, again, the website is the best. Probably Twitter is my favorite. Oh, sorry, X. It's called X now.
We take both names here.
It's at DM Rische is my handle there. But I think you had mentioned about posting, connecting on all of them. And I left my email if someone would love to connect or just would like to go further on a topic. I will gladly, talk with you or meet with you.
Wonderful. Well, we'll make sure that it's on my website, joshtamber.com, for everyone to make sure that they're grabbing all those social media links or in the show notes. For those who are watching on YouTube, of course, we'll have that in the description too. So that way you can connect with David, or like David said, you can also email him. I know he's a wonderful resource that you can tap into. So make sure that you're connecting with him on social media, go into his website and get him out for a service. Or if you have a question that you would like him to expand upon, you can definitely email him also. David, I just love your journey. I love all of the different things that you've implemented over this time as a leader. And thank you for sharing these practical and really easy things that people can take and use tomorrow to help their culture and be creative as an educational leader. So with that, thank you so much for being on Aspire to Lead.
Again, I am honored to be here, Josh. And thank you for all the work that you're doing. It's phenomenal. So thank you.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. We'll see you on the next episode.